Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are waiting for a few more folks to join, and we will start shortly. All right, it looks like we have a nice group of folks here. So, welcome to another episode of the Power Up series. And in today's discussion, we will dive into how Unit21 helps financial institutions to fight against check fraud with our brand new check fraud toolkit. My name is Alex. I'm the head of fraud risk here at Unit21. I'm a fraud prevention practitioner for the past 15 years. I held several positions in fraud operations, analytics, consulting, and building and developing my own fraud strategies. Today, I had the fraud and risk department in Unit21, working with my go-to-market team, product team, and marketing team. And my co-host today, a man who could have been a Hollywood star, a brain surgeon, probably both, but he chose to be the best solution engineer on planet Earth, my good friend Connor Snodgrass. Connor, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. What an intro. Hey, everybody. My name's Connor. Work here at Unit21 for the past 4 years. Helping our customers fight fraud and money laundering, and spend a lot of time, working with Alex to implement his ideas. So we'll be talking through some of the strategies, and I'll be walking you through a demo of what they look like in our solution.
Thank you so much, Connor. I'm very happy to have you by my side today. So before we kick things off, a few couple housekeeping items. First, this session will be recorded and emailed to everyone on this call in the next 24 hours. And the second of all, we will host a live Q&A where me and Connor will do our best to answer all of your questions at the end of the session. So you're supposed to see on the right side of the screen a Q&A button. So feel free to submit any questions if you have for me and Connor. You can also do it anonymously, so don't be scared to do so. And we will do our best to answer all of your questions live. If we ran out of time, we will make sure to email you your answers after the session is over. But please make sure to put your name if you do want to get an answer emailed to you. So let's move on. What do we have on the agenda for you today? So we will cover the new toolkit of check fraud and how Unit21 approached this problem. We'll cover briefly what is Unit21, because I do see we have a nice mix of existing customers but also prospects. Then we will speak about how how the growth of check fraud is happening in the recent years. We'll talk about the current solutions in the market and how they are not really solving the problem. And we will dive into what we actually build. And obviously, Connor will show us all the different features in the check fraud toolkit that we developed. And as I said, we will leave some time for Q&A. Alrighty, so for those of you who are not familiar with Unit21, we are risk and compliance infrastructure, and our mission is to stop bad actors and deliver justice and safety to the world. And you might ask yourself, well, Alex, how do you do that? We provide an infrastructure to detect, investigate, and report bad actors throughout the customer lifecycle. We offer tools and advanced analytics to help organizations to fight fraud, money laundering, and other illicit activities. And we also launched the Fraud Consortium, which already have more than 52 participants and almost 38 million US adult entities in the consortium. Here are some numbers of what we've seen across our global customer base. As you can see, just from the numbers from 2023, we help to monitor a lot of different events, so more than 4 billion events monitored, and we help we'll help our customers detect over 4.3 billion of fraudulent activity. All by doing that, where we help our customers to be more efficient, average customer reporting an increase of decrease of 53% in alert handling time. So let's go back to the subject of check fraud and why are we here today? So, check fraud is nothing new. Checks have been around for decades. But if you live in the United States, chances are, just statistically, you are using checks more than any other person in the world. As you can see at the bottom left side of the screen, US is still leading in usage of check fraud by far compared to any other countries. But it also means that when we use a lot of checks, we will obviously see more and more check fraud. And I think some numbers say that check fraud is now a $24 billion problem. I think it is paints a good picture, but it's not accurate. I think it's actually way more. And the main reasons for the surge in check fraud in recent years is basically the surge in mail theft. Because what happened during the pandemic, if you think about this, so many people went unemployed and everybody was sitting home, and people start to think, okay, I need creative ways on how to get money. And check fraud and mail theft became a nationwide problem, where we see almost every state in the country reports an increase in check theft and increase in attacks on mail carriers. And this is what driving check fraud significantly in the last 3-4 years. But also the availability of certain technologies, for example, paper that you can use to print checks on, or actual printers to use to print checks, are now more available to the masses than what they used to, let's say, even 5 or 6 years ago. And all that is thanks to the marketplaces in recent years shifted from the dark web into Telegram. So if you were into check fraud, let's say 10 years ago, and you wanted to commit check fraud, you wanted to buy checks, you want to do counterfeit checks, you had to go to the dark web. In order to go to the dark web, you need a special browser like Tor. You need to understand what's an onion address. And then once you get into certain marketplaces or forums, you need to have some type of credibility and to be actually access those forums and actually be able to transact and buy those illicit products. Now, those operators of those marketplaces in the recent years shifted to Telegram. And with Telegram, all you need to do is just to download the app on your phone. It's fully encrypted. So unless you put your full name or your email address, chances are they won't be able to track it back to you. And the accessibility to stolen checks and to check printers and any other list product that is out there is much, much higher. And this is why we also see such an increase in check fraud, because simply it's more available for the masses and more people can practice check fraud if they choose to do so. Now, here is an interesting infographic about where do we see the most SARs that being filed around that's relevant to check fraud. And you can see states like Delaware and South Dakota. And I think it does paint an interesting picture, but it's not full. When I saw this infographic, for example, the first question I asked myself, well, it seems like Florida is an amazing state that has no fraud, but actually, if you are first line of defense and if you're dealing with check fraud on a daily basis, you know very well that there's so many fraudulent checks going around in Florida. And I think the reason this infographic is interesting because it does go by SARs filed per 100,000 residents, but we also know very well that not all check fraud that's happening, it's actually ends up with a SAR being filed on that specific activity. So what I think what's happening here is that we see states like Delaware, who's at least by this infographic, leading check fraud. But I do think that because so many different organizations and businesses are incorporated in Delaware for tax reasons, there's many checks in circulation in that state. And if you have a lot of checks in circulation, it means that the people who are practicing mail theft are actually more interested into going to those states, going to those geographic areas, and steal more checks from mailboxes. And as we know, checks that are used for B2B purposes are usually high dollar checks. So it's not like I'm sending my friend a $300, or I know I'm even using checks to pay rent. In B2B space, we have tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars are being written on checks to move money between businesses. So I do think that is actually what is represented as infographic, but I think it's a good food for thought. So tackling check fraud. Now I consider myself very lucky because I do have a chance to speak to leaders in the industry, and I probably spoke to anywhere between 30 to 40 banks and credit unions just from the beginning of the year. And each and every one of them tells me that check fraud is a big problem. And it's not just a big problem in terms of how much fraud losses it costs. It's a big problem because it creates such challenge from operational perspective. How do you even tackle that? And when we look at what the market offers today, it seems like there is there's no silver bullet to solve check fraud. It's usually several different point solutions that can offer you some type of coverage. Some of them are very outdated and work slowly, so sometimes you will see it, even if you have a high risk check, you will only see it the next day. So by the time you see the check, it might be already late and the money is gone. But basically the solutions are, they start obviously with the remote deposit capture. So which vendor do you use to actually capture the check that is being deposited remotely? And then you have some legacy vendors that offer some types of rules and some type of graphics and dashboards to help you better understand if a certain check is in circulation and about to become fraudulent. Then you have third-party vendors who offer some type of dark web monitoring, case management workflows, basically investigation tools that usually do not comprehend the 360 degree of the user lifecycle and don't really give you the visibility of how the user has been transacting with you outside of checks. And this is pretty much how we decided to tackle the problem. And when we thought about what solutions we would like to deploy in Unit21, we decided that we are not going to go after remote deposit captures. We feel like this space today is covered by fairly healthy vendors that do good job in capturing the image. But basically, if you want to look at the check fraud toolkit that we offer today, is everything that happens after the check is being deposited and the remote image is being captured. And now let's move actually to what we build and what features you can expect. So Connor will demo this in a few minutes, but I would like to say that our toolkit is a combination of 4 key features that we developed specifically to tackle check fraud. Now, it's 2 categories. We aim to do a better prevention, and under better prevention, we have dark web monitoring. Now, with dark web monitoring, basically what we're doing is we are surfacing stolen checks that being sold online, namely on Telegram channels, like I mentioned before. So we have sources of Telegram channels, and we know where those marketplaces are operating. And what we do is that we scrape those channels, we look for the stolen checks, and then we surface them to the banks and the credit unions who use this feature as part of the data enrichment that they get in Unit21. So each time we have a flag for a stolen check, if this specific financial institution is working with us on that data enrichment part, they will get a notification saying, hey, there is a check that you issued, one of your customers wrote, it's been stolen, and now it's being sold online. The second part of the prevention side of things is our out-of-the-box check rule templates. We do understand that sometimes the approach of writing a rule and how to start thinking about writing a rule can be challenging. And this is why we decided to create out-of-the-box scenarios that you can use pretty much on the fly. So the only thing you will need to do with those types of rules is to define the different thresholds that you want to monitor, and you can deploy the rule literally within minutes, and Connor will be able to demonstrate that during the demo today. The second part is, when we interviewed our customers, we understood that there is a very big problem around how do we investigate check fraud and how much time it takes to investigate check fraud, and what insights and what calculations and consideration the analyst should take during this investigation. And we developed two specific features to tackle this problem. So the first one is the check investigation toolkit. And with the investigation toolkit, we pretty much bring all the relevant data that can be useful for a check fraud investigation under one screen. So the agent can be very efficient with how they investigate checks. They don't need to jump between different tabs. They don't need to go back and forth with the to the platform that comes with your RDC vendor. So if you have a check image that comes from the RDC, you can now ingest it into Unit21. And when that image is being ingested in Unit21, you unlock many different capabilities. You can render the check and make sure that it looks better, improve certain features of the check to try to identify if it's been photoshopped. You can do a signature comparison, for example, with previous good check that you see from a customer or from the specific sender. And the last feature that we do around investigation is basically an AI co-pilot, where it's a feature that you can use to automate the investigation. And when the AI detects certain feature that you can flag and choose, you can pretty much say, if you see certain things or certain elements in the customer's behavior, you can start automating some parts of the investigation. But I think you had enough of me talking for now, and we will move to the fun part of this webinar, which is the demo. Connor, I will stop presenting my screen. Would you like to present yours?
Absolutely. Well, let's walk these people through it. So let me make sure I've got the right screen open for you. And let's dive in. So we're going to start by taking a look at some of the more sort of proactive components of this, starting with our detection models for suspicious check transactions. For those of you who are sort of less familiar with our platform, detection models is what we call our transaction monitoring and behavior monitoring solution. And amongst a couple of different ways that we can construct rules, we have what we call scenario models. And these scenario models are really easy to use. You kind of think of them as like Mad Libs for transaction monitoring a lot of the time. And we have some new check fraud rules that we've developed to try and address this growing challenge. And so some of those things might be things like, a check that matches a recent deposit, looking for, floating or kiting, or duplicate checks, or a check number out of sequence. And if we look at what these sort of look like, we'll see that our duplicate check number scenario is built to tackle a specific thing where we want to flag check numbers that have or flag checks that have an identical check number to one that we've seen, maybe in the past 7, 30, 60, or 90 days. And it's really easy to configure these. We can also add additional conditions. So that might be something like, layering in, some components of third-party data or data about the region that a customer is in. So this might be something where, if we have somebody who is registered in a high risk area, so their state is, on the border. We see Arizona, New Mexico, Florida. We might want to increase let's see if I have Florida in here. We might want to adjust this threshold and say, actually, for those places, we want it to be within, 30 days. We want it to be within 90 days. So a lot of control over how this rule is actually going to function. And then obviously we have, quite a few that are targeting different types of specific suspicious behavior for check transactions. Now, in addition to that, we also have our dynamic rule builder, which allows you to sort of, in a very, very flexible manner, build different types of rules. And in this example, we might want to look for behavioral deviation. So we might just want to see, do I have any customers who are, sending in like a large volume of checks that is unusual based on the behavior that we've observed from them over the last 90 days. So a couple of different ways to write these types of rules, some that are looking for like very, very specific types of check behavior, and some that are just looking for unusual activity. Maybe this would be a sign that somebody has had their checkbook stolen, or that they have been taken advantage of in a scam, and you might want to just sort of check in and make sure that they actually intended to make these transactions. Alex, anything you want to add to that before we dive into the investigations portion of the demo?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one common question that comes after seeing those out-of-the-box rules is people ask us, okay, but where's the score? Why there's no machine learning score? And to be honest, when we were in development of those features, we decided to leave machine learning scoring out of this toolkit simply because we believe that we much prefer to give the flexibility built in within a rule that which will empower the analyst to actually understand why a certain alert is generated, and then when the alert is generated, to actually give them the right tools to investigate it, rather than give them, hey, this is a 99, this is probably fraud, you should do whatever you want to do, without actually giving them any guidance.
All right, thanks, Alex. Well, let's jump over into sort of alert and case management. So a lot of the tools that we've built, in addition to detecting suspicious checks, are designed to help your team be able to investigate suspicious checks more efficiently. So if we take a look at this alert, where we're looking at a large suspicious check deposit, we'll be able to come in and sort of see what happened, who the customer was that was flagged, and have a bunch of different tools to review this. Starting with just the basics, looking at the check transaction itself. We can also review the documents and compare this transaction, or this check image, maybe against other checks. So I could take a look at this and say, okay, I want to look at the check front of a check from Stanley here, and compare it to the back, so that I can look and see and compare these signatures to each other. And I can look at them side by side. I could also, potentially do some cropping here and say, I actually want to be able to, look at this, crop that section, rotate it. I'm going to do the same over here and just crop that signature. And then maybe I'll overlay those two and say, okay, I want to expand this out. and these don't look, all that similar. I'm looking at it and there's, some unusual things. This, little section here on the T's looks pretty unfamiliar. It looks a lot different than what we've seen otherwise. So I might be a little bit suspicious of this.
And we actually
Now
have a
we can,
question in the Q&A asking exactly that. Can we show how we compare signatures of checks? So here it is in live demo.
uh, awesome. We can also compare this against, other documents. So, we might want to go in and say, okay, we want to compare this to the signature card that we have on file. And we can use the same types of tools to, compare their signature. Um, Another thing that we can do when we're doing this type of analysis is we could manipulate the check image, and we could adjust the brightness, we could adjust the contrast and the saturation, or go to grayscale. And all of these tools are essentially designed for us to be able to sort of analyze the image in different ways so that we can spot potential manipulation, whether that's digital editing, or that's somebody using whiteout, or somebody washing the check, that we can spot those things by adjusting the check image. uh, Great question about overlaying the whole check. Absolutely, you can just overlay the entire check and analyze it that way.
And for the following question about how different the signatures need to be to warrant a SAR, well, I don't recall any specific requirements around that, so I think it's mostly for your personal interpretation. Obviously, yeah, if the signature are similar and you feel like this is the same person, maybe that's not a strong enough signal. But if it's completely different, then again, if if the transaction threshold meets SAR filing reasoning, so yeah, you can probably do that.
Yeah, and that's where I think it just becomes one data point in the overall investigation. If everything else seems normal, seems reasonable, maybe you go through and you see that this customer regularly transacts with the counterparty, and everything seems pretty normal. Then great, maybe a slightly off signature is fine. They were writing in a rush and it's kind of scribbled compared to their typical signature. But if it's like a completely different writing style, or if there's other things that make you feel suspicious about the check transaction, it could just be one component. Um, and that sort of leaves us to sort of how you go through an investigation with this. So you'll be able to set up a checklist of tasks that your team are supposed to go through when reviewing this. And one of those might be looking at the check image and reviewing it. Some of the other things might be looking at when was it written, how recent is the customer's registration, stuff like that. And one of the other tools that we've developed is this AI agent that can assist your analyst by doing some of this research for them and summarizing its findings. It's not going to be deterministic in the sense that it's going to necessarily tell the analyst what to do with this, but just help augment their ability to sort of quickly gather information and make a determination on what to do. So in this case, we're even using some computer vision to analyze whether the check has been altered. We might be doing something, doing some other things to pull the date, to see what is the status of the customers, and just pull that information so that the analyst has it right at their fingertips. And then from there, they can use all of our customizable workflows to move this alert through your process, whether that's marking this as a false positive and clearing the check, or it could be flagging this as legitimate fraud and kicking off a process to freeze those funds and initiate some other actions. Or it could just be escalating this up to a second level of investigation. Now, we talked about this a little bit. Another type of alert that you can get is an alert for dark web monitoring. So this is a sort of an automated service, and this is relatively straightforward. That if you're using this feature, Unit21 will automatically be sort of scraping the dark web using a partner service to pull in check images from your institution and automatically create alerts when we spot a check that belongs to your organization, one of your members, that's popped up on the dark web, so that you can alert them and can make sure that this isn't used to continue to commit fraud on their account.
And this is a huge point of value for the end user. Think about it. If you have a customer and you find out that their check has been stolen from the mailbox that they might just put in the mailbox just yesterday, right? And you will be able to flag that check and give them a call of courtesy and tell them, hey, we found that the check that you deposited yesterday in the mailbox was stolen and now being sold online on the dark web. Think about the impact in terms of customer service you're making for your customers, for your end users.
All right. Well, these are all of the sort of features we wanted to demo. I'll pass it back over to Alex, and I think we do have a couple more questions that we want to go through.
Absolutely. Thank you, Connor. I'll share my screen again. All right. So as you saw, this is a very new product from Unit21, and when we developed that, we really wanted to make sure that we try to attack check fraud from every possible angle. At the end of the day, as a vendor, our mission is to make sure that the analyst who works the alert make the best possible decision in the shortest amount of time. And I think this toolkit, these 4 different features, are a great way to improve efficiency, but also to make sure that the decision is being made is very accurate. You have a quote at the bottom of the screen from one of our customers who enrolled to the dark web monitoring, and she basically said, once we enroll to that feature, we were able to prevent $50,000 of potential check fraud within the first 7 alerts. So think about it. We alerted them, we scraped the dark web, we found 7 checks that are being sold on the dark web that belong to them, that belong to their routing number. And this is a potential savings of $50,000 just by generating 7 alerts. So really reducing fraud losses is the focus, but the way we do it is what we empower the team, we empower the analysts to really understand what is being alerted, why it's being alerted, how to conduct the right investigation. Then on top of that, we lay a gentle layer of AI automation, not something that will completely take over and take the agent out of the picture, but really use AI in a smart and comprehensive way to help the agent to make the best decision in the shortest amount of time. And this is pretty much what we developed for you. I will use this opportunity to invite you, if you haven't done so yet, to register to our Fraud Fighters Virtual Summit that will happen on July 17. I've been in this space for 15 years. I never seen a lineup of speakers like we have for the virtual summit. So really, you can scan the QR code. I'm sure you will find something that speaks to you. We will have a lot of fireside chats. We will have a lot of different trainings and demos and many interesting speakers. And I'm sure you will have a blast if you decide to join. And obviously, this is absolutely free and it's open for everyone from the risk and compliance space. So feel free to scan the QR and join us on the virtual summit on July 17th. Now let's move to the QA. So we do have some time. Let me see what questions are still open for me and Connor to answer. Okay, why is check fraud is more common in certain states? I think the biggest drivers of check fraud is, first of all, the availabilities of checks in a specific area. So if you have geographical areas that are more, more prevalent to usage of checks, we will see more checks from there. The example that I gave with Delaware, it's very interesting. I think fraudsters understand that if there is so many companies who are incorporated in Delaware, and those companies write a lot of checks, it's a good place for them to go start doing mail theft. So definitely mail theft is one driver. And at the end of the day, I know from speaking with many colleagues, and it's an interesting statistic that I unfortunately don't have the numbers to back it up, but it does seems like the usage of checks is going down. So we see less checks are being written, but the dollar value of those checks remaining the same, which tells me that if I had to guess, I think we see less usage of checks among consumers, because I think consumers today have more efficient, faster ways to send and receive money. But I do believe that checks are still very popular in the B2B space. So if I had to guess, I think this is what's happening. So this is on that question. Connor, maybe you know the answer. How fast do we get data from the dark web?
I don't know the answer to that off my head. I would guess it would probably either be an hourly or a nightly process where we get that data, but we can double check on that.
Yeah, so definitely not real time, definitely not as soon as a check hits the marketplace, we automatically will alert you, because we do need some resources to scrape the many channels that offer checks for sale. But I would say yes, at least a couple times a day we get refresh data from what is being sold out there. Okay, we have a question here. Do you have any integration with positive pay systems? Connor, do you know the answer to that?
Not any direct integrations to my knowledge. Although we could certainly, integrate with them through our normal channels, like we do with a lot of other third parties.
That makes sense. Is there any way to freeze the account or place the funds on hold once alert with the alert threshold? Well, yes, you can utilize the webhooks that we offer as part of Unit21. So basically, any alert that is being generated, you can use webhooks to have automatically talk Unit21 with your backend system, and either put a hold on the funds, freeze the account, generate an email to the customer, whatever the action you want to take on your backend can be done via webhooks. Another question asks, typically there are no account numbers or names displayed on the dark web checks. Are you able to detect the actual client that is impacted, or just the routing numbers? Normally you would have to purchase the check to get the details. Well, it depends. I think the scraping method looks for what is available there, but also tries to clear the image as much as they can. Obviously, if the data is hashed in a way we cannot uncover either the business name, the personal consumer name, or we don't have number, account number, routing number, it's more challenging. But yeah, I can tell you that we look at the checks, we try to clear as much as we can to give a very precise alert. And I think that we have answered all. Okay, so if we don't have any more questions from the audience, I will thank you for your time and thank you for joining us today. I welcome you to scan this QR code if you want to read our latest white paper on check fraud and learn more about how we try to solve this problem. And if you want to learn more about Unit21, you just can go to unit21.ai. We have a lot of good content there for risk and compliance, folks. Connor, thank you so much for the demo. Thank you for joining me today. And I hope to see you all in our next Power Up series next month. Thank you so much.